She walked through life assuming your presence was a constant, an unchanging force she could rely on without thought or effort. It was so easy to take for granted because it always seemed infinite, as if your attention, care, and support were inexhaustible resources that would always be available to her. She never paused to consider the quiet labor behind your consistency, the patience behind your understanding, or the loyalty behind your gestures. Pride convinced her that she was in control, that she could act as she pleased without consequence, and that what she had would never fade. And so she allowed herself to neglect the significance of your presence, treating it as ordinary, inevitable, and permanent. But absence has a way of revealing truths that were always there, quietly hidden behind familiarity. The moment you step back, the reality of what she lost begins to surface. Every place she used to see you, every routine that once included your presence suddenly feels heavier, emptier, and unmistakably void of the comfort she once ignored. What she once took for granted, the casual reassurance of your attention, the warmth of your involvement in her life, becomes glaringly precious precisely because it is gone. The absence transforms ordinary moments into reminders of what she failed to appreciate when she had it. She begins to notice the subtleties she overlooked before, the way your laughter filled a room, the way your words could calm her frustration, the steady reliability that made the unpredictable world feel less intimidating. All these small, constant things she assumed were trivial now stand out as invaluable. Pride had kept her from acknowledging them at the time, had told her she could afford to be indifferent and that your presence would always be there regardless. Now, without it, the weight of each neglected moment presses down on her with unmistakable force. This realization is often accompanied by a quiet, gnawing regret. She replays scenarios in her mind where she could have shown appreciation, where she might have reciprocated care, or where she might have acknowledged the significance of what you gave freely. Each memory highlights a lapse, an opportunity squandered because pride, distraction, or self-absorption convinced her it didn't matter. And with each reflection, the heaviness of your absence grows. It is not just missing you physically, it is the knowledge that she ignored the rare and irreplaceable qualities you brought into her life until it was too late to act without consequence. Her awareness also brings a humbling understanding. Presence is not entitlement. Relationships, trust, and intimacy require care, recognition, and reciprocity. The constancy she assumed as her right was, in fact, a gift she failed to honor adequately. Absence teaches her that what she mistook for permanence was always fragile, dependent on her acknowledgement, her respect, and her gratitude. And now the absence feels heavy because it embodies all the unspoken lessons of what she failed to give in return. Even in moments where she tries to distract herself, the weight lingers. Memories resurface at unexpected times, a song, a phrase, a place. And with each reminder, she realizes the depth of her loss and the permanence of your absence. She cannot reclaim what she once dismissed, and the recognition of this truth makes your absence feel all the heavier. Pride may have made her blind to value before, but loss and reflection strip away that protection, leaving only awareness and the undeniable impact of what she overlooked. And in this clarity, she understands that the heaviest absence is not the physical distance. It is the loss of what was once taken for granted, and the realization that she cannot turn back time to honor it as she should have. When you step back, when you withdraw, when you choose absence over presence, it does not go unnoticed. It is not merely the physical distance that affects her. It is the emotional space that your absence creates, the quiet it brings, and the clarity it forces upon her. Silence is powerful. It carries a weight that words often cannot. In that silence, she can no longer hide behind distractions, pride, or denial. She begins to notice the emptiness your absence leaves, the moments once filled with connection and attention now replaced by a stark void. It is in this quiet that her emotions rise to the surface, unfiltered, unavoidable, and undeniable. At first, she may try to rationalize it, to convince herself that absence is temporary. that you are busy, or that your distance is inconsequential. But over time, the truth becomes unavoidable. She realizes that your withdrawal is not an accident or a passing phase. It is deliberate, intentional, and meaningful. The constancy she once assumed is no longer there. The presence she once took for granted is gone, and in that absence, the weight of what she failed to appreciate begins to settle in her mind. Every silent hour becomes a reflection of the importance of what she once ignored, every moment of stillness a mirror highlighting her own oversight. Your absence forces her to confront the depth of her feelings in a way that presence never could. When you were there, her emotions were often muted by familiarity, by the assumption that she could always rely on your attention, your care, and your loyalty. But in your absence, every feeling she ignored becomes magnified. Loneliness, longing, regret, and recognition of your true value rise to the surface with clarity. She cannot escape them, and she cannot distract herself from the understanding that she allowed pride and complacency to blind her to the very thing that sustained her emotional life. This silence is also a teacher. It forces introspection and reflection in a way that conversation often cannot. She begins to replay moments, not with anger or accusation, but with a dawning comprehension of her own responsibility in creating distance. Every moment she ignored, every careless word or gesture, every time she assumed your patience and loyalty were infinite, now comes back to her with undeniable weight. She recognizes that absence is not just an emptiness, it is a reflection of consequence. It is the mirror that exposes the choices she made, the opportunities she let slip, and the care she failed to honor. She also notices the contrast between how she feels in your absence and how she felt when you were present. The comfort, stability, and certainty you provided were so natural that she never truly recognized them. Now, without them, every day feels heavier, every decision more precarious, and every moment less secure. The absence is not merely physical, it is a loss of equilibrium, a disruption of the emotional foundation you once provided. And in that realization, she understands the silent magnitude of what she took for granted, the longer your absence continues. The more acute the awareness becomes, she sees not only the void you left, but also the ways her life has changed because of it. Pride, ego, and distraction no longer shield her. She must face the reality that your distance exposes, that she cannot rely on permanence, that she cannot reclaim what she once assumed was endless, and that her own choices contributed directly to this heaviness. And in the quiet of your absence, she begins to learn the harsh truth, that silence can teach more than words ever could, and that the weight she feels is the undeniable measure of what she truly valued only once it was gone. There is a profound emptiness that comes with losing the stability and consistency your presence once provided. She may not have recognized it at the time because when someone is constantly there, it is easy to take for granted. She walked through life assuming that the reassurance, the reliability, and the calm you offered would always be available. Your presence was a foundation she leaned on without thinking, a quiet security she rarely acknowledged. She did not see that every smile, every word of encouragement, every moment of patience, and every consistent act of care were gifts that required recognition. Pride and familiarity blinded her to their significance, and only now, in your absence, does she fully comprehend what she lost. The void left by your absence is heavy precisely because it is not merely physical. It is emotional, psychological, and existential. Stability is something that gives life rhythm and meaning, and when it is removed, everything feels unbalanced. She feels the uncertainty that replaces the certainty you once brought, and each day becomes a reminder of what she failed to appreciate. Even simple routines, the kind of mundane interactions she once overlooked, become marked by your absence. She senses the gap in her life that cannot be filled by anyone else, and the weight of that realization presses on her with subtle but relentless force. Your consistency was more than habitual presence. It was a quiet anchor that allowed her to navigate life with confidence. She may have dismissed it at the time, thinking that love, loyalty, and care were constants she could always count on. But now she sees that they required acknowledgement and respect, and that stability is not a guarantee but a gift, fragile in its dependence on mutual awareness and appreciation. The absence forces her to confront the fact that what she treated as ordinary was, in truth, extraordinary. Each moment without it sharpens her understanding of its value, leaving her with an unmistakable sense of loss. She also begins to notice the ripple effects of losing your presence. Decisions that once seemed simple now feel heavier, responsibilities feel more burdensome, and her emotional landscape feels less secure. The foundation you provided, one that she rarely noticed, was a stabilizing force, and without it she experiences life as less certain, less supported, and less manageable. The void becomes more than absence. It becomes a lesson in the significance of what she ignored, a reminder that stability is earned and maintained through mutual care and attention. Regret seeps in quietly but powerfully. She recalls moments where she could have expressed gratitude, returned kindness, or simply acknowledged the consistency you offered. Each overlooked gesture, each dismissed effort now feels like a missed opportunity. Your absence exposes the consequences of her actions or inactions and illuminates the true weight of what she once took for granted. Pride, which once masked her indifference, now only intensifies the realization of what she has lost. The void she feels is a reflection of both your absence and her failure to value what was always there. Over time, the awareness of this emptiness forces her to reflect deeply. She begins to understand that stability and consistency are not rights. They are cultivated, nurtured, and maintained. She sees that what she assumed was permanent was, in reality, delicate and dependent on acknowledgement and reciprocity. The heaviness of your absence teaches her that emotional foundations cannot be neglected, that the security provided by another's presence is precious, and that once it is gone, it cannot easily be recreated. And in this quiet reckoning, she comes to understand that the weight of your absence is not just about missing you. It is about realizing the irreplaceable value of the stability and consistency she failed to honor while she had it. Absence has a way of forcing reflection in ways presence never could. When you are no longer there, she begins to replay the moments she once took for granted, examining her own actions, choices, and the subtle ways she contributed to the distance between you. She recalls the times she could have been more attentive, more vulnerable, or more appreciative. She remembers moments when pride, distraction, or ego guided her behavior, convincing her that connection was endless and that care was permanent. In your absence, all of this becomes painfully clear, and she realizes the true weight of the opportunities she let slip through her fingers. The process of reflection is neither immediate nor dramatic. It is gradual, often quiet, and deeply introspective. She finds herself questioning why she acted as she did, why she dismissed gestures that were meaningful, and why she allowed ego to dictate her responses instead of recognizing the value before her. Each memory carries a tinge of regret, and the absence of your presence amplifies that feeling, highlighting what she could have done differently. Even small moments, once considered trivial, now loom large in her mind, and she sees clearly the cumulative effect of neglect, indifference, and pride. As she reflects, she also begins to understand the permanence of certain consequences. Words unspoken cannot be retrieved. Apologies never made cannot undo the distance created. Every missed opportunity to show care, patience, or understanding becomes a reminder of the choices that led to this emotional gap. She realizes that pride, which once seemed protective, has not spared her from the emotional cost of her actions. Instead, it has delayed her understanding, making the reckoning she now faces all the more weighty. The absence is not merely a physical separation, it is a reflection of responsibility, accountability, and the consequences of choices she once overlooked. This reflection also carries a humbling lesson. Relationships are not sustained by assumption or entitlement. Emotional bonds, trust, and connection require attention, effort, and reciprocity. In your absence, she realizes that what she assumed would always be available depended on mutual care, acknowledgement, and respect. The quiet of your absence forces her to recognize that the connection she undervalued was neither limitless nor guaranteed. Each reflection, each moment of replayed memory makes the truth undeniable. The consequences of her actions or inactions cannot be ignored. Furthermore, absence allows her to see the contrast between who she is now and what she could have been had she acted differently. She observes her own patterns, recognizing moments of pride or stubbornness that created unnecessary distance. She understands that reflection without action can be painful, that missed opportunities are lessons, and that emotional reckoning is unavoidable. The more she contemplates what she ignored, the heavier the sense of regret becomes. It is not me. Rely nostalgia or longing. It is a recognition that her own behavior shaped the current reality and that her choices carried real consequences. The process of reflection, though painful, is also transformative. She begins to internalize the lesson that care and presence are invaluable, that emotional neglect has a cost, and that pride often obscures the true value of what is before us. The absence you created serves as both a mirror and a measure of what was lost, forcing her to confront the truths she avoided while you were there. Every thought, every memory, and every imagined scenario teaches her the weight of what she once dismissed, and the silence around your absence becomes louder with every reflection. And in this quiet, unrelenting reflection, she comes to understand that your absence is not just a physical void. It is a profound teacher, revealing the significance of her missed opportunities, the permanence of consequence, and the unavoidable weight of her own actions. As she observes you thriving in your absence, the depth of her realization becomes undeniable. She sees the composure you maintain, the confidence you exude, and the strength you have built without her influence or approval. Every achievement, every moment of calm, and every instance of self-reliance stands as a silent testament to your growth, a growth she once assumed depended on her presence, her attention, or her involvement. The contrast between her expectation and reality strikes sharply. Where she once believed she held significance by default, she now sees that your strength was never contingent upon her, and that what she once assumed she controlled was in fact entirely independent. This observation brings a painful clarity. She begins to understand that her pride and actions, or lack thereof, contributed directly to the distance that now exists between you. She reflects on the mom. Hence, she failed to recognize your value, dismissed your patience, or underestimated the consistency you brought into her life. Every oversight, once justified in her mind as inconsequential, is now illuminated by the reality of your continued growth. She realizes that her attempts to maintain control or protect her ego only widened the emotional gap, and that your absence has allowed her to see the consequences in sharp relief. The heaviness she feels is amplified because growth cannot be replicated. She cannot reverse time to participate in the process that has made you stronger, calmer, and more self-assured. Every step you take forward without her highlights what she cannot reclaim, the influence she once thought she had, the moments of intimacy and trust that cannot be perfectly restored, and the stability she once relied upon but failed to honor. Her pride, which once justified indifference, now magnifies her regret, for she understands that she underestimated not only your presence but also your independence and resilience. As she watches from a distance, she begins to notice subtleties she ignored before. Your confidence is quiet, not loud or boastful, but unmistakable. Your calm demeanor reflects a mastery of self and circumstances, a proof of the work you've done internally that she could neither provide nor replicate. This quiet strength is a mirror reflecting her own shortcomings, the missed opportunities, the prideful moments, and the decisions that allowed your absence to become so pronounced. She realizes that she cannot change this reality, and the recognition of your self-reliance leaves her grappling with both admiration and regret simultaneously. Her reflection deepens as she recognizes the permanence of certain lessons. She understands that connection, attention, and loyalty are never guaranteed. They must be honored and reciprocated. Your growth, V, visible even from afar, underscores the truth that she cannot reclaim influence or significance simply because she desires it. It is a humbling realization. Strength, presence, and emotional stability are cultivated, and when she failed to acknowledge them in you, she inadvertently allowed distance to solidify. The weight she feels is a consequence not only of your absence, but of her failure to value what was inherently strong and steady all along. In this quiet observation, she also begins to internalize a broader understanding that life moves forward, that people evolve, and that regret often stems from failing to engage with growth while it was happening. She sees that her inability to act with awareness, humility, or vulnerability has left her on the outside of the life you're now building. Pride may have shielded her in the moment, but it cannot shield her from seeing the clarity of your independence. She recognizes that your absence was never a void. It was a reflection, a teacher, and a measure of what she failed to honor, and in the weight of witnessing your growth. Without her, she comes to understand that absence is not just the loss of proximity. It is the undeniable, inescapable reminder of what she took for granted and the heavy truth that she cannot reclaim what she once undervalued, even if she never admits it aloud, never reaches out, and never expresses the regret she feels. The awareness of loss becomes a constant presence in her mind. Pride may have allowed her to shield herself temporarily from vulnerability, embarrassment, or the discomfort of confronting her mistakes. But it cannot protect her from the emotional weight that comes with absence. She feels it in quiet moments, in memories that resurface without warning, and in the knowledge that what she once dismissed or ignored is gone, irretrievable, and deeply missed. The absence you created is no longer empty. It is filled with the significance of everything she once overlooked. She begins to notice how her daily life has changed without you. Simple routines feel incomplete, ordinary moments feel hollow, and even accomplishments lack the resonance they might have had if shared with someone who valued and understood her. The constancy she once took for granted, your care, attention, and presence, is now replaced by a tangible void. Each reminder of what she lost, whether small or profound, serves to reinforce the truth that her actions, her pride, and her inattention carry consequences she cannot escape. The absence becomes a teacher, revealing lessons she ignored while you were present. Memory plays a pivotal role in her reckoning. She recalls gestures that once seemed trivial, the patience you showed when she faltered, the understanding you offered without expectation, the quiet support she assumed would always be there. Each recollection now carries weight, a reminder of her own disregard and the rarity of the consistency she failed to appreciate. Pride may have once convinced her that she was untouchable or independent, but your absence exposes the reality that emotional connection is not guaranteed. It is cultivated, nurtured, and honored, or it is lost irreversibly. This awareness is deepened by reflection on what she cannot change. No apology, no explanation, and no effort can fully restore what she once had. The passage of time, your independence, and the lessons she failed to learn while you were present have solidified the separation. She recognizes that absence is not just a physical distance, but a permanent shift in the dynamic she once assumed would remain constant. Pride, which may have once masked her understanding, now amplifies the impact of this absence by highlighting her own limitations and the irreversibility of certain choices. The heaviness she feels also comes from witnessing your life continue, grow, and evolve without her influence. She sees the strength, resilience, and composure you maintain in your absence, and the contrast with what she once assumed she controlled becomes undeniable. Where she believed her presence was pivotal, she now sees that you are whole, capable, and thriving independently. This insight sharpens the understanding that absence does not diminish value, it illuminates it. The lessons of pride, neglect, and consequence are now inseparable from the reality of your continued strength. Ultimately, her regret becomes a quiet, persistent companion. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It resides in the corners of thought, in unexpected moments, and in the awareness that what she undervalued is lost beyond her control. She learns that pride, while protective in the moment, cannot shield from the enduring consequences of neglect and inattention. The absence you created, silent yet unmistakable, becomes both a measure of value and a teacher of permanence. And in this unspoken, unavoidable awareness, she realizes that absence is not merely the lack of presence. It is the undeniable weight of what was once taken for granted, the lessons of pride, and the enduring truth that some losses leave marks that cannot be erased.